What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope everybody out there is having a wonderful day. It's watermelon day here on the homestead, or watermelon planting day here on the homestead. We've got some nice little watermelon plugs that we need to get in the ground, so we're going to be talking about planting standard watermelons versus planting seedless watermelons. Show you how we get these seedless watermelons planted and the certain configuration that we have to follow when we plant them. We'll also probably be taking another look at our tomatoes. I think they need healing, so we may end up throwing some soil to those towards the end of the video. So here's where we're going to be working today, and we're probably only going to plant this little piece of the plot here to the right of those English peas. I think we can squeeze in 2 rows of watermelons right here. We're going to save this piece over here for those Alibaba watermelons that we started in the greenhouse recently. So it'll be a while before those are ready and before we plant that, but it's ready whenever we're ready. We've got these English peas in the middle. I imagine they'll be toast by the time the watermelons really start thriving. Well, they're looking pretty good right now. And while we're out here, we probably need to go ahead and tie another line of string on the trellis for these guys here. Probably need to do that before we plant our watermelons. You can see we've got some blooms happening here. Now these got bit back a good bit by that late frost we had. We can still see some of that damage down there, although some of the plants have recovered. We're starting to see some blooms, so it looks like we might get a decent amount of peas here. Now, if you haven't been keeping up, we planted our spring English peas earlier than we've ever planted them. I think it was around the middle of January. And they were looking really good. And had we not got that late, bad, last frost, it was going to be something else. Now, it's just going to be something. Alright, so we got our 4th line of string ran for our English pea trellis there. Probably will still have to add a 5th line, probably not a 6th line. From when I grew this PLS 595 variety in the fall, if I remember correctly, some of them got about 4, maybe 4.5 foot tall. But I think one more line of string might take care of them. And although my point might be a lot more convincing had not some of these plants gotten burnt by that frost, I still think this is the easiest and cheapest way to trellis English peas. Most people already have T-posts on hand, and a box of twine will last you a long time. And just come in here and add lines of string as they grow. Somebody commented several videos ago and said, why didn't you just go ahead and run all those lines of string at one time instead of coming out here and just doing one line every few weeks or so? I don't really know why. I just like to add one line at a time. That's just the way I like to do it. It's almost like I want to reward those plants. So I'm not going to put up another line of string until they get to the point where they can reach it. Once they grow up to the next line, I reward them with another line. And we just do it every few weeks. Alright, so we got distracted by the peas for a minute. Now back to the watermelons here. So this is a plot that we converted to no-till back this past fall. Got a lot of compost on it here, and it should perform pretty well planting these watermelons in here. One thing I've learned about this thick compost layer is that it doesn't hold water very well with new transplants, so I have to water more than I normally would. But once those transplants get roots established down there a little bit, I do get a lot better water conservation, and then we don't have to water them as much. And in these no-till plots, like that no-till onion plot over there, we tend to have less issues with diseases. So we got our main line installed here. We got our hookup in the center there, and now we can hook in drip lines anytime we want, anywhere along this main line. If I'm wanting to plant 2 rows right here on this side, 2 rows of seedless watermelons, I probably need them at least 5 feet apart, which I think I can make happen here. I've got plenty of room for that, I think. Working under the assumption that those peas are going to be toast by the time these watermelons really start growing. And here's our watermelon transplant. So the smaller ones on this side are the seedless transplants, and those are tougher to grow. We didn't knock it out of the park with 100% germination this year, but we did a lot better than we did last year. So making some improvements from year to year. And this is the pollinizer, which are much easier to germinate and much easier to grow out as a transplant. And you can see the appearance of them compared to the appearance of them. These are a lot easier to grow than these are, but we still have a good bit of viable transplants here. But before we can put those puppies in the ground, we need to get our irrigation lines ran here. So let me go grab all my tools. We'll install a couple lines of drip irrigation here, and then we'll be ready to put them in the ground.
Keep my hand here on your back. I won't move it while you sleep. The shaking hours have settled down, 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 down. Take all the help that you need.
All right, so our irrigation lines are in and running. Now let's talk about how we have to put these puppies in the ground. Now, several videos ago, we did a whole segment on seedless watermelons. How do you get seeds from seedless watermelons to plant? That whole process, how it works. And I'll put a card up here somewhere. I want to check that out. If you have never tried growing seedless watermelons and you're pretty good at growing regular watermelons, I definitely think it's worth a shot. Definitely worth a try, at least 1 year. We really like them. Did pretty good with it last year, and looking forward to hopefully success this year. Now, as we mentioned in that previous video, the trickiest part about growing seedless watermelons is getting the seedless seeds to germinate. They can be very, very finicky. So we did a few things this year that were different that seemed to have helped. One, we nicked the rounded end of the seed just barely with our knife. That definitely seemed to have helped. The other thing is we wrapped this end of the tray where the seedless watermelon seeds were planted. We wrapped this end of the tray with saran wrap, which helped preserve heat, humidity, and it also prevented us from overwatering. Overwatering is a huge issue with seedless watermelon seeds. If we just water them one time and then wrap them up, we can't water them when they're wrapped, and we left them wrapped until we started seeing some green emerging from the perlite there. And so we ended up getting, I would say, about 70% germination last year. I was probably in the 40th percentile. The seed packet says 97%, so we still got some room for improvement, but we're getting there. Now, these seedless watermelon transplants, when they grow out into big mature plants, they won't produce any male flowers. So to get pollination on the female flowers that they will produce, we've got to have the pollinizer here. So our pollinizer we're using this year's Tender Crisp Orange, which is an orange variety, much like our seedless one here is an orange variety as well. So the pollinizer is going to provide those male flowers so the bees can come along, get pollen from those male flowers, and pollinate the female flowers from these seedless ones here. So in this little patch of watermelons, we'll have two different types we can harvest. We'll have these orange crisp, I think that's right, yep, these orange crisp, orange seedless watermelons, and then we'll have this Tender Crisp Orange seeded watermelons. Both of them will be orange. One will have seeds, one won't. These seedless ones should be round and a good bit smaller. These Tender Crisp Orange ones should be oblong and a little bit bigger. So when we transplant these, and you definitely want to transplant them, I couldn't imagine trying to get these seedless seeds to germinate, just direct seeding them. You definitely got to have a controlled environment. Anyway, when we transplant these, we got to transplant them at a 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 seedless transplants for every 1 seeded transplants. And we got 30-foot rows behind me here. I'm going to put these plants 2 feet apart. That means I need 15 transplants per row. So somewhere between 8 to 10 seedless transplants per row and about 3 to 4 seeded transplants per row. Now, we don't have to get super exact with that in a backyard garden situation. We want to make sure we got enough of these to provide pollen for these guys, but if you're short one or two either way, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. For example, I'm pretty sure I got enough seedless transplants here to plant 2 rows. I definitely don't have enough for 3 rows. That's why we're doing the orange watermelons on this side, and we'll do the olibabas on the other side. But say I was starting to get to the end of that second row and I was running out of good looking transplants, I could just fill out the row with these seeded ones and it'd be just fine. It would just basically mean I'd have fewer seedless watermelons in that plot, but I'd still get a pretty good mix of both. So instead of having to keep up with that 3-to-1 ratio as I'm working along the row there and kind of keep count in my head, what I like to do is go ahead and lay out the pollinizer plants along the row. So I just walk along the row, count the emitters. I know where those pollinizers should go. I go ahead and put a transplant there. That way, when I'm working along the row, all I got to do is pull out the seedless ones. Now, I am deciding to do a little bit something different here, or something a little bit different. Since I have so many good looking pollinizer plants, and I want to make sure I've got pollen out here for these seedless watermelons, I think I'm going to put 2 pollinizers right beside each other at a 1-foot spacing every time we come along with that 3-to-1 ratio there. So I got 2 there, I've got 2 there, and 2 there down the end of that row. Same thing on that row. 6 pollinizer plants, 3 groups of 2. So we got to be a little bit delicate with these seedless transplants, but we got an emitter right here. So we're going to put them in here, tuck them in there nicely right beside that emitter. We'll cover up the extra tape as we go along here. We have to be a little bit delicate getting these things out of the tray as well. We'll just pick the best looking ones here. Grab that one out, not a bad looking root system on that one. So we skip over that emitter and we'll put this plant right here beside this emitter. All right, all right, all right. We delicately got them all in the ground. Those seedless transplants look really tiny right here, and they are, but I think they'll be just fine. We picked today to plant these because we've got a nice overcast day out here, a lot of cloud cover. If it was really, really hot out here, I might worry about these little babies, but since it's overcast, I think they'll be just fine. We'll let this drip run for a while, and hopefully they'll start taking off, growing pretty soon. And we still got a few transplants left, so we'll put these back in the greenhouse. We'll see if these other seedless ones do anything. They might not. They might just get kind of hung up where they are. We'll definitely hang on to these guys. If for some reason our seedless transplants out there all die, we surely hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, we still want to get some watermelons from that plot. So we'll save these for last ditch emergency, filling in the gap with seeded watermelons. Okay, now let's do a little mater management. So after that hard rain we had a few days ago, we got a lot of weeds starting to pop up in some of these plots out here. Our tomato plants are looking really, really good, especially this guy right here on the end of the row. That thing is growing really, really fast. So we need to do some weeding in here between the rows and along the rows. And one thing I like to do when the plants are small, especially with these determinate tomatoes like this, is to heel them or pull some dirt around them. It helps take care of those weeds along the row there between the plants, and the plants also seem to like it a lot. But before we heel them, I'm going to go ahead and put in the stakes for our eventual Florida weave trellis that we'll be using on these 2 rows of tomatoes, because when I put these stakes in the ground for that Florida weave trellis, I have to scratch down here, find where my drip tape is, and then put the stake on either this side or this side of the tape. I don't want that stake to puncture a hole in my drip tape. I can patch it up, but that would cause a lot of problems. Now, if I've got a big mound here, like we're going to have in a minute, then I have to dig even deeper to find that tape. So let me go ahead and put these stakes in the ground while this tape is pretty easy to find. Then we can do our healing. Now, if you're planting your tomatoes in rows like we do, and you're growing determinate tomatoes like these are, which are only going to get about 4 foot tall, the Florida weave is a great way to trellis them. Now, I've tried lots of different stake types and stake spacings over the years. I'm going to tell you what's worked best for me. I've tried wooden stakes. Some years they would work really well. In other years where we got a lot of rain, they would rot, or if the plants got really heavy, everything would fall over. So what I've found, the best thing for the Florida weave is to use these 5 foot T-posts here. Get you a T-post driver and hammer these suckers a foot in the ground. That way you got 4 foot sticking out of the ground. That's how tall these determinate tomato plants usually get, and it ends up working pretty well. Putting them a foot in the ground makes them real sturdy. Even if that whole row of tomatoes there gets really heavy, it should stay put. And then as far as the stake spacing goes, I've found that if you're using nothing but these 5 foot T-posts along the row, you can get away with 4 determinate plants between each T-post or each set of T-posts. It won't hurt anything to put a T-post every 2 plants if you've got plenty of short T-posts. I'm going to go with a T-post every 4 plants. I did that last year. Everything held up and it worked pretty well. I wouldn't try to put more than 4 plants between the T-posts, because you're going to start to get some sag in there in the middle once those plants get heavy and loaded with tomatoes. So I've got my T-posts, I've got my hammer. Let's get them put in the ground.
Put it on just like an evening dress. Break to the right, sway to the left. In the morning everything is spent, and I make my way back home.
So after a lot of clanging and banging, we got them all in the ground there. So we got 4 plants between each set of posts on that far row there. Here it's a little different because these cherry tomatoes right here are going to get cages, not the Florida weave. So it worked out for this little piece of a row to go 4, 3, 3. Now if you're going to put T-post a foot in the ground, you're going to have one of these. If you ain't got one of these and you decide you're going to ride to Tractor Supply and get you one of these, you might as well go ahead and get you one of these, a T-post puller. Because when them T-posts are hammered in there 12 inches or a foot deep, you can't pull them out by hand. You're going to have one of these too. Alright, now let's pull some dirt up around these babies. Now my preferred tool for this, especially when I've already got the stakes in, is just a standard garden hoe. So you can use something like this. Almost everybody that gardens has one of these or has had one of these at some point. I like this variation just because it's a little bigger and I can pull a little more dirt with it. So we want to be gentle here. We don't want to pull so much dirt that our plant starts leaning. We're going to cover up these bottom leaves. I pruned them before. I've covered them up with the leaves just like they are. I found it doesn't matter at all. You're just pretty much wasting your time if you do prune those bottom leaves. So we're going to take a good bit of dirt here. Just going to kind of ease it up around those plants. Just like that. We're going to do it between the plants too. Cover up that drip tape. A little more, smother out those weeds there. And just work along the row here. And we'll also do the same thing on the other side of the row. So we'll go down each side of the row, pull that soil up there, tuck those plants in nice and tight, and they will surely appreciate it. In, tucked in there nicely. Got some really good in-row weed suppression going on there. And then we'll just wait on them to grow a little bit more before we start adding lines of string with our Florida weave trellis. So I feel like we got a good amount of stuff done in the garden today. Got more line for our pea trellis ran, watermelons planted, maters healed, stakes in the ground for our Florida weave. Pretty full day in the garden, I'd say. So I think I'm going to hang it up for today, and we'll see you guys on the next video. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to check out our affiliate links below. A lot of good companies we trust and use in our gardens here at Lazy Dog Farm. We've got some coupon codes for some of those so you can take advantage of those discounts. If you haven't already, go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where you can find our garden blog, recipes, recommended products, and even some Lazy Dog Farm hats and shirts. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like and share, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell. By the beauty of your life,